Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and to this very spring themed pet portrait in time-lapse. This is done in soft pastel and you're about to see each and every little part of it come together here in a very speedy version. If you would like some real-time footage from this and some tutorials on different elements within this piece, then do check me out over on Patreon where I'll be releasing those. But please do enjoy this here and hit subscribe. This piece is a whopping 27 inches tall, so it's actually the full sheet size of pastel matte paper, and it's the sienna colour of pastel matte paper that I'm using for it, probably my favourite colour from the pastel matte range. I really like the mid-tone and the warmth that we get from this colour underneath. And you can see from the reference image that my client gave me that this is an absolute delight of an image. What fantastic dogs, posing like absolute pros. You couldn't really ask for better than this to work from. And I was really pleased that my client wanted to go big with this because, well, it really warrants a big painting, I think. There's so much going on from the distant background, the depth that we get right through the forest. And often when I'm painting something like this, I will perhaps blur the background. I will add a lot more blur to the background than is in the photo reference. And in this case, I did a little bit just to knock back some of the detail that's back there. But at the same time, I really did want to try and create this forest scene almost as it is, because I really like the trees. I like the sense of depth that we get. You can really see far back into the forest there, and you can see that carpet of purple bluebells starting to come out of the forest and come down towards the foreground. So I really wanted to try and create that. And it was tricky to try and find a balance between adding detail here, but also not overdoing it, because at the same time, it's a really busy image. And the main focus has got to be these two delightful border terriers in the foreground. So as busy as it is, as much as there is going on, it's still my main focus to try and draw our eye predominantly to the two main characters. So everything else is just there to complement them. And it was tricky in this piece to try and find that balance between adding lots of detail but ensuring that the detail in these two in the foreground would still override all of that background detail. I do love painting a background, and I've done many Bluebell settings before. I mean, lots. It seems to be one of the most popular things that I get asked to paint. And after one of the last ones that I did, which was a few years ago, I actually promised myself that I wouldn't do it again. And here we are, doing it in style, because this is probably one of the biggest Bluebell pieces that I have done. And there's just so much work involved. So much work, as always, in the actual portraits. So you can see that the two dogs have a lot going on. We've got this scruffy type of fur and, a lot of colours through the fur. And then on top of that, it's not just their faces, it's the full bodies too. So heaps of work in the dogs alone. And then from previous experience painting bluebells, I absolutely know how much work that takes. And I do try and take some shortcuts. So you can see that I've come from the top part of the composition where the purple is more solid. We're seeing more of the solid carpet of bluebells all as one. And then gradually those bluebells will come into focus as we come down towards the foreground. And I'll save the main focus or the main in focus bluebells for the very foreground area. So in actual fact, the rest of the carpet of bluebells doesn't actually take me that long because they're a little bit more loose and suggestive. You can see I'm not painting absolutely every little bell-shaped flower. It's more just bursts of colour interspersed with the greens of the grass. So that is how I try to create the depth in the piece, letting some of these background elements be a little bit more suggestive. And then really going for it with the crisp detail on the dogs. You can see that, as always, I'm putting a lot of effort into the outer edges of the dog and how they kind of sit in front of that slightly out of focus background area. That's really what's going to make the two dogs pop out from all of this busy detail. But both dogs' faces were such a delight to look at. If I'm honest, I'm actually really going to miss this piece in my studio. I have so enjoyed, once I got their two faces in, I have so enjoyed walking past the door and glancing in at them because they just have such joyful expressions. And what can be more joyful than two dogs having a brilliant time in a forest? So their joy really comes across in the photo reference. And I really, really wanted to try and capture that in the painting. But to me, this is just such a joyful painting overall because it's got such beautiful colours. I mean, nature really knows how to do colour theory. And here we've got the beautiful contrasts of the blue violets, the purples, against all of the greens. It's just so lush. So that was what I was going for with this piece, to really push those colours, and you'll see that I actually add a lot more bluebells to the original photo reference just to enhance the purple, just to really go for it with the purple. So I filled in a few of the background gaps with more flowers and also added some in focus bluebells to the foreground using some other photo references for that. But I just had to chip away at this little by little. And you can see that I didn't work the whole background all at once. I did give myself little breaks and I started work on the two dogs. I got their two faces in just because it's nice to do that. You know, it's nice to get their faces looking back at you at some point. And I really avoided going back to the background for a while because I was enjoying doing the dogs. And sometimes a part that I don't really enjoy is a complete mess of leaves and grass and in focus bluebells, hence not really wanting to do a bluebell piece again. So I honestly took a long break from that background and just enjoyed working on down the two dogs. There was as much work in their chests and their lower bodies and their legs and paws. All of that takes as much time as the detail in faces. So I had plenty to get on with here, and actually while I was working on this piece, at some point my laptop also broke. And you can see it just to the bottom left corner there. I'm still working from the laptop at this stage. So I had a few mishaps along the way with this piece. And I also took a bit of a break in the middle of this piece to go and paint another little demo just to give myself a break from it, really. These bigger pieces, it's not that there's anything extra technically difficult in them because I've painted all of these sorts of elements before. There's nothing new to me here. What is difficult about this type of piece is the scale of it. How long I know it's going to take when I'm starting on that blank piece of paper. and just how much patience I know I'm going to need to almost battle my way through a piece like this. So it's the same with all the bigger pieces that I've painted, and I've done pastel pieces right up to 40 inches in size. So this one's 27 inches tall, or 70 centimeters, which is the full sheet of pastel mat. But I have actually worked twice this size before, and always with the bigger pieces, it just takes patience. And I really try to split it up into bite sizes. So I'm not expecting to get a huge amount done each day that I come to do a bit. And, I'm just happy to chip away another piece, and see it finally start to come together. So I think a lot of the time it's actually patience that gets you there. Of course, there is technical skill involved here, but like I said, there is nothing here that I haven't done before. It's just that it's lots of it being thrown together in one painting, and the painting is huge. So this month on my Patreon, I have been chatting to my patrons about how much of this they would like to see, because it took me way longer than my average painting takes, and that will be a lot of hours of footage. And normally with my tutorials, I go back and I add narration, I add color codes popping up as and when I change the color that I'm holding. So there's a lot of time spent in the editing process as well. And I think what I'm going to do for this one is focus on key areas that my patrons have expressed interest in. So I know that there are several people who would like to see how I created the forest at the top of the piece. Almost everyone has expressed interest in the log that the dogs are sitting on. And of course, some of the Bluebell areas as well. And perhaps one of the dogs I will edit together. So I think my plan for this tutorial series is to release all of the footage. So I've filmed it all, I might as well release all of it. But there will be certain parts where I really go into detail, talking about the process, what I'm doing, showing the colours that I'm using. So I won't release all of it fully edited, but there will be several parts to this. So if you're struggling with bluebells in particular, or with painting a forest, there will be certain parts of this tutorial series that may be of interest. So some of my tutorial series are probably not the type that people are actually going to paint along with, that they're going to create the whole piece. But series like this are particularly useful if you are just looking for something in particular and you need help with something very specific. So that is the plan for this. I will start editing it now, and that will appear on my Patreon channel very soon. If you haven't visited my Patreon channel, I have a ton of videos there, tutorials of all lengths and all sizes. You can check out my library of tutorials without going near Patreon. This library is on my website, emmacolbertart.com. I'll add links to all of that in the description below. And my tutorials are really a mixture of this sort of thing, right down to small, manageable projects that you can do in a very short amount of time. But I do like to show my patrons what it takes for me to create something like this as well, as this is where I put the most amount of effort. So this has been a long time lapse because it took me so many hours to paint this that even the speedy version is quite long. So I appreciate you if you made it to the end of this. If you enjoy any of my videos here on YouTube, then please do remember to hit subscribe. Check out those links in the description. But thanks very much for watching this, and until next time, happy pasteling.